The Urban Education Institute is designed to create knowledge to improve the quality of schooling across urban America. We do applied research to inform practitioners and policymakers and the public. We develop teachers, teacher leaders, thinking about how to develop people for this critical enterprise. We operate a charter school with 4 campuses that serves 2,000 children across the South Side, designed to help the country understand how to serve children who are growing up in urban America at very high levels. From all of this work comes tools and ideas and practices that are designed for scale, designed for national use. So we also work on the distribution and sharing of the knowledge and tools that we're building here at a broad scale. In 2006, the Consortium on Chicago School Research did a study that indicated that 6.5% of Chicago public school 9th graders would have a 4-year college degree by the time they were 25. That study then was backed up by a series of studies which we call the potholes on the path to college, which really tried to understand what was happening and why. Why does college matter? College matters because if you go to college, you'll live 10 more years than if you drop out from high school. You'll earn approximately $1 million more in your lifespan than if you just finish high school. You will give blood, vote, volunteer more. You'll have children with higher levels of educational attainment. The evidence to suggest that post-secondary education and college in particular is instrumental to future success is unambiguous, unimpeachable. It also matters for our social fabric, it matters for our economy, and it matters for American democracy.